Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the winners and the losers from this past weekend. Definitely quite a bit all over the place, and Ryan Day firmly in the losers category, at least for the time being. We'll see if he can salvage that in the playoff. But let's get into this because it has started in earnest. The coaching carousel, we've had a number of hires over the past 24, 48 hours. The transfer portal, we've had a number of guys jump in, including some big-time ones over the last little bit. So let's get to this really quickly because it's that time of year. December is the craziest month on the calendar for CFB, and it has officially started. And it started down there in Tallahassee, where they had to make two new coordinator hires. Got rid of Alex Atkins, got rid of Adam Fuller, and now they have to rebuild that staff, try to rebuild what they had in 2023. And they started with Gus Malzahn. The UCF head coach has left there. He's resigned, and he's going to take the offensive coordinator job at Florida State. Definitely one of those things that kind of shows the state of college football right now. You really want to be a part of one of those big-time teams that has a path into the SEC or the Big Ten, and coaches are kind of telling you that. Also, Gus Malzahn probably not quite as into recruiting as he was back in the day, so definitely one of those jobs that looks a little bit interesting right now. I think it's a relatively good hire. Will be interesting to see how it all works out, how much he and Mike Norvell work together, how much it's Gus Malzahn's offense or Mike Norvell's. It'll be interesting to watch that unfold, but definitely a guy that can put together a really good offense, and especially with the talent they'll have in Florida State, will be a very fun thing to watch. But to me, they made the hire of the year thus far in the DC department. Tony White, the Nebraska DC, has been hired at Florida State, and really, really good one. I believe only allowed 4.4 yards per play, good for 5th in the country this year at Nebraska. Really incredible coach. And a couple of the guys have already decided they're going to the portal to probably follow him there. It'll be really interesting to watch this one develop. I think this is one of the guys that you're going to be watching not only the next year, but the next couple of years, because this probably has a head coach written all over him. Very, very talented guy and just a huge hire for Florida State. Another coordinator hire happened over at Oklahoma. The new offensive coordinator for Oklahoma is going to be Ben Arbuckle, the offensive coordinator for Washington State this past year, and this is a very, very good offensive coordinator. The run game for Washington State was downright special. The quarterback run game is going to be huge for them, and sounds like John Mateer might just be following him over there to Norman. Haven't heard anything necessarily concrete about that, but it seems like it's heading in that direction. John Mateer will jump into the portal, likely follow his offensive coordinator to Norman, and likely be the starter for Oklahoma next year. So definitely a very talented guy, one of the guys that I've enjoyed watching the most this year. Something to watch as you get into that. It does feel like Jackson Arnold's probably out the door. We'll see what happens there. If he is, then it seems like John Mateer is going to go ahead and jump in there, be the starting quarterback, and we'll see what happens. I think this is a fantastic hire. It sounds a little bit like Lincoln Riley. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing for Oklahoma fans, but definitely a really weird thing when I first heard him. But I think it's a fantastic hire. It will be awesome to see what he can do at the SEC level. Going down to the G5, we'll update you on a couple of head coaching jobs. Blake Harrell has been officially named the head coach, had the interim tag for much of the year after Mike Houston got let go early. Was a fantastic defensive coordinator, did a great job as the head coach. Definitely going to be a really fun name to watch, and a program that has a lot of upside if you can really tap into that potential around the recruiting world. Tulsa has fired Kevin Wilson. They've let him go, and it's going to be Ryan Switzer taking over. I don't know if that makes anyone else feel old, but it definitely made me feel old. I won't lie to you. Drake Kirkpatrick Jr. got me just a little bit. This one's a little bit crazier. I cannot imagine this, but definitely a name to watch. A very talented guy, obviously a very talented player, has done a great job at Tulsa in his short time there, and definitely will be interesting to watch to see what he can do. Maybe he'll get the job as the full-time head coach. It'll be interesting to see what happens around that Tulsa job going forward. Over at Temple, they made their hire with Casey Keeler, the Sam Houston State head coach, did a great job with Sam Houston this past year, got them very, very close to that Conference USA championship, but barely missed out on a couple of tiebreaker scenarios. Really, really good year for the Bearcats, has won multiple FCS championships with Sam Houston before they jumped up, as well as with Delaware. A very, very good head coach, and definitely a guy that it'll be interesting to see what he can do up there in Philly. The last head coach, Stan Drayton, I liked a lot as he was coming in. Definitely a guy that has a little bit more head coaching experience than Stan Drayton did, so definitely something to watch as you go into that one. I think it's a relatively good hire. Temple's a relatively hard job, so we'll see what happens there. And then FAU, they made their hire, Zach Kitley, the offensive coordinator for Texas Tech. He becomes the youngest head coach in FBS. He's only 33 years old. this is a name to watch. This is a rising star in the industry. I don't think he'll be at FAU very long, if I'm being totally honest. I think this guy will turn that thing around pretty quickly. I think he'll get a job pretty quickly in the Power 4 level. Very talented guy and did a great job with Texas Tech's offense. I expect him to be a name that we're watching for the next decade in college football and maybe plus. And then you have a couple of openings all over the place. We talked about Gus Malzahn walking out the door at UCF. They're on the market for a new head coach. A lot of different people to consider here. I think one name to watch is Alex Golesh, the head coach at South Florida. Wasn't a great year this year, but a very talented coach that has a lot of respect around the community. I think Will Stein, the offensive coordinator up there at Oregon, is looking for his jump and was just waiting for that right opportunity. This might just very well be it. This is a very good job, definitely one that has quite a bit of upside. Obviously, having to deal with Florida, Miami, Florida State creates some problems for you in recruiting, but you still have a pretty good footprint there in Orlando, and definitely a team to watch that I think, given the right hire, could really take off. Then you have Mac Brown. He is walking out the door in UNC, kind of being pushed out the door. The way that they handled that, I did not like at all, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But at the end of the day, the name that I see continue to pop up is John Summerall, the head coach of Tulane. Obviously, we won't hear about that until the end of the week, likely once he plays that game and their fate is kind of sealed for the season. But that's the name I continue to hear. I think a lot of people will be in for this job. I think this is a really good job. I think UNC is the one on the market right now that I would probably jump at the most readily. I think there's a recruiting footprint there if you get the right guy in that door. So I think John Summerall would be that. Definitely a lot of guys to consider for that job, and I think a lot of guys would do a great job there. Neil Brown has been let go over at West Virginia, and this one is a very interesting one because there's quite a few names that have popped up for this one. I've seen Rich Rodriguez pop up. I've seen Jimbo Fisher pop up. He is a West Virginian at heart and definitely would be very interesting. Definitely a guy that probably wants to get back in the sport, so maybe that's the hire that they make. I think there's a lot of different guys to look at here, but definitely one to watch. I think West Virginia is one of those jobs that it's really hit or miss. I think you can open a lot of doors there. I think you can do a lot of things. I think Neil Brown started to do that last year. Probably should have done a little bit more in the portal this last offseason to set them up for success this year. But at the end of the day, very incredible job and could be the weird hire of the year if it's Jimbo Fisher. Then we have Purdue. Ryan Walters was let go. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. Probably won't have quite the net to pick from as everyone else, but I have seen Dan Mullen be brought up for this job. Brought up for quite a few jobs, to be fair, UNC as well. So definitely will be something to watch there, but maybe Purdue can get a really good head coach if they get Dan Mullen. I think they could tap into what Jeff Brom had tapped into there in Bloomington or in West Lafayette. Definitely will be really interesting to watch and a very, very interesting job where it's going to be tough, no doubt about that, but you tap into the right guy, a lot of really special things can happen there. And then everyone's going to be watching this one. This is the one that would send a bomb into the coaching world. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I don't think it's going to happen before the playoff, obviously, and a lot of different things, but if it does happen, the floodgates will open. They will hire a big-time head coach from another program. That program will hire someone, and so on and so on, and we'll have to figure out where we stand at the end of it. That will be the one that will throw a total wrench into this thing, and definitely will be an insane thing to watch. But as of right now, he has a job. I'm not necessarily saying he's not going to have a job, just saying if you were to get fired, that's when this entire thing explodes, and we'll have to figure out where we stand at the end of it. And then you have a couple other G5 jobs. App State opened yesterday. Southern Miss is another one that I think is going to be incredible. Central Michigan, UMass, a couple other ones that are definitely going to be really interesting to watch. Southern Miss, there's a lot of talk around Charles Huff right now. It'll be interesting to see what those are. App State and Southern Miss at the G5 level, I think are really good jobs if you tap into them the right way. And then we'll roll through the transfer portal here really quickly. Miller Moss is in the transfer portal as of right now. It sounds like Auburn, Iowa, a couple other teams are firmly in the mix for this guy. I know UCLA was in during his recruitment early on in high school. Something to watch there. Maybe Michigan gets involved in this one, but the way I see it, it's likely Auburn, definitely Iowa, and we'll see what happens from there. A couple other teams that'll be in the mix. I kind of like Auburn in this one, if I'm being totally honest. I think he would be a guy that I think Hugh Freeze would jump at. We'll see what other quarterbacks jump in, but definitely something to watch there. Caden Salter is also in the portal, the quarterback over from Liberty. This is a downright special athlete. He's had some issues with turnovers throughout this year, but definitely a guy that you can turn on if you're a run-first offense. This is probably the guy that you're going to want to tap into. I think that he will have an absolutely massive market for him out there. It'll be interesting to see where he signs on. Definitely a very talented guy, and I have to assume a power four job will open for him. It'll be interesting to see what that is and what the job is and what the offense is, because he has a pretty particular set of skills with the run game, but definitely a guy that I think is going to be really, really fun to watch, and probably the top quarterback as of right now, right up there with Miller Moss. And then we just got to talk about the Auburn quarterback room. It sounds like they're losing the top three guys this offseason. It sounds like Hank Brown and Holden Grenier are going to walk out the door into the transfer portal. Definitely something to watch. Hank Brown is a guy that I really like. I think the arm talent is pretty obvious on that kid, and definitely will be a name to watch. Peyton Thorne obviously is going out the door, and they just got to hit on whichever quarterback they're going to bring in. We knew that going into the year that this was going to be the year that they had to hit on one, and it just got a little bit more dire with the depth problem that they're probably going to have here in a second. Micah Hudson is another guy to watch, a five-star wide receiver coming out of high school. He signed with Texas Tech and didn't necessarily catch on the way that a lot of other freshman wide receivers did this past year. He's finding his way into the portal, and this will be a huge one. A&M, LSU, I think Texas could get involved. A couple other teams that absolutely are teams to watch here. I think this is one of those guys that anyone would love to get their hands on. Very, very talented player, and although he didn't play too much at Texas Tech this year, definitely someone that, if you put him in the right system, could absolutely explode. Then Kevin Concepcion. This, to me, is the best player in the portal right about now. This dude is a factor on every single team in the country. I've seen a lot of different teams kind of talked about with him. I don't think there's anything really concrete around him yet, but I do see a team like Texas or a team like Alabama or Penn State needs a big-time wide receiver. I see them definitely getting involved with this one. His brother just decommitted from NC State and committed to Kansas State, so a couple of different things to watch there. Definitely a guy that he's getting a lot of calls right now, and a lot of big-time calls. I don't think there's necessarily one that he wouldn't like, frankly. It'll be interesting to watch this one. I think Alabama's firmly involved. I think Penn State will get very much involved. And then I think you see Texas and Georgia and a lot of other teams. This is a very special player, and whoever can get their hands on him is definitely going to want to. And then Julian Humphrey, a very talented player on the defensive side of the ball for Georgia. He got benched earlier this year, kind of recently, for Daniel Harris at that cornerback position, and he has found his way out. This is going to be a huge market. I think Texas is going to be in for this guy. I think A&M is going to be in for him. He's from the state of Texas, so definitely something to watch there. This is a very talented player. He did miss the mark just a little bit this year in some different areas on that team, but at the end of the day, a very talented player, a lot of great measurables, and definitely someone that is going to have a huge market. Is definitely going to be on one of the Power 4 teams, one of the big-time teams next year, if I had to imagine. So that's kind of where we're at right now. A lot of other guys that have jumped in and will jump in today and tomorrow, and we will update you on all of that as it opens on Monday. But a couple other things for the NFL draft here. Luther Burden is going to go into the NFL draft. Have to imagine he's one of the top 3 wide receivers off the board with Travis Hunter and Tedariah McMillan. Really talented kid, and frankly, whoever drafts him, you're getting an absolute dude. I think he might just have a gold jacket in his future. This dude is absolutely insane. And then Caleb Johnson, a remarkable player at running back. He is declared as well. He's RB3 in my mind. I think Ashton Genty and maybe Amarian Hampton are above him. A couple other guys that, frankly, this running back class is absolutely insane. This is one of the best pure runners of the bunch. He's absolutely incredible and definitely will be a really fun guy to watch as he gets into the NFL. But that's where we stand right now. We just got into the month of December. There were much more to come. I promise you that. We will keep you updated as it does, but a couple of big-time hires at the coordinating positions and a couple of big-time players, including Miller Moss, finding their way into the portal. Definitely something to watch as we move forward, and we'll keep you updated as we do. But let's take our third break here, and when we come back, we're going to get into a little bit of a whip around of a couple other teams that we're probably not going to be able to talk about throughout the postseason. Obviously, a couple of teams finished their seasons this past week, so want to give some love to some teams that had some great years, that didn't have some great years, but are going into big-time off seasons. We'll break it all down right after this, so stick with us.